Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and here today I am flying solo. Couldn't find Brian anywhere. I looked under rocks, I looked around trees, wherever that crazy hiking guy might be. He left me all alone here to cover Sunday, Halloween, October 31st. Week 8, the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to play the Cleveland Browns in what will be, we've heard Mike Tomlin say this before, a hostile environment. I expect it to be very hostile because Cleveland fans have always been really passionate, but how much more passionate are they going to be now that they know they've had the upper hand on the Steelers the last two games going back to the final week of the season, albeit with Mason Rudolph as a starting quarterback. That gets them into the playoffs. They come to Pittsburgh in a cavernous Heinz Field with no fans and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, one and done, basically, wild card playoff situation last year. Not sitting well, maybe with some of the remaining players still with the Steelers because you had some retirements and some fallout there, particularly with coaching staffs. Obviously, Marquise Pouncey as well, walking away. A lot of things have changed, but some things still remain the same. And man, are there some storylines just heading into this game. The injury report is longer than both of my arms, particularly even on the Cleveland Browns side, so I'll get into that in a second. But the biggest news, the holdup with getting the show out to you later than usual this week for the pregame. The news on Baker Mayfield. He's going to play. He's going to give it a go, and how's this going to work exactly is what I'm trying to figure out. He's attempting to become the first Browns quarterback to win 3 straight against the Steelers since Bernie Kosar back in 1988 and 89. That's courtesy of Jake Trotter, who covers the Cleveland Browns for ESPN. And man, you're talking forever ago, right? So there's some speculation there though with Baker Mayfield. He got medical clearance apparently last night to play in Sunday's game. He's expected to start despite a torn left labrum and a shoulder fracture. And now they're saying he has a full range of motion in his shoulder and his strength back. The medical decision was made. The fracture's healing. Somebody said that there's swelling that's gone down. I don't know how I would feel about this if I were in the Cleveland Browns shoes. Let's just say I put on a whole different set of stuff here. I had everything done up. That was my team. The roles reversed, and let's say Ben is banged up like that. We know Ben plays like a gladiator and a warrior, but we don't always want him to, and you've got a very young quarterback in Baker Mayfield here that when the pressure's put on him, he has a tendency to give up the ball too, so he's dealing with some injuries to his targets. I won't necessarily say that Odell Beckham has been the biggest contributor over the last 2 seasons for the Cleveland Browns due to a myriad of injuries himself. He is also on this report questionable for Sunday with a shoulder injury once again. His teammate Jarvis Landry, who did play last Thursday, so they had a little bit of a mini bye here as well. The Cleveland Browns did because they played on a short week last week against the Denver Broncos. The Steelers, of course, have had the layoff and hopefully don't come out rusty as well. So they've had some time to heal. Jarvis Landry was really banged up and somehow ended up playing in that Thursday night game. He was on the injury report, more or less, I believe, just to give him some rest and have him ready to go. So he should have one of his primary targets and a player who catches just about anything that goes in his direction. Jadeveon Clowney, did I mention that or not? He's also on this report. Ankle, groin, and knee. So the other edge rusher here with the Cleveland Browns defense up against that Steelers offense, they may be down yet another player. So heading down this whole report, Nick Chubb, running back, been dealing with a calf injury, limited over the last 2 days on Wednesday and Thursday. Clowney was a DNP. Beckham was also limited. You have Jack Conklin, the tackle, also limited. And if I go back to some of the DNPs from the Thursday night game, it was Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, and Jack Conklin, 3 starters for the Cleveland Browns. Important players here that didn't play that Thursday game, so they got an extra game to kind of heal, lick some of their wounds, and we're going to see what ends up happening if they come back. One thing we know for sure, though, is that Kareem Hunt is on injured reserve. He will not be involved in this game. You got some other players, mostly reserve players, but also their fullback Andy Janovich has been on IR. MJ Stewart, another kind of role player, kind of one of these nickel or dime players that comes in a DB specific package. He's on injured reserve and has been. And then most recently, we mentioned this earlier this week on the other show, Jeremiah Wasu-Koromoa, a second-round pick, inside linebacker who's been tearing it up, also on injured reserve. So that's going to hurt the Browns defense to a certain degree with players who are sidelined here. There's a few more, and I'm going to try and go through these. Jeez, oh man, you've got, let's see, Tony Fields, AJ Green, Blake Hance, Malik Jackson was a DMP and limited with his knee. There's a guy up front, a defensive tackle that would be important for the Browns. Jarvis Landry, as I mentioned, was a DMP and limited. We already mentioned Baker Mayfield. Here's another big one. It seems like the growing club, but up in Cleveland instead, because the Steelers got this going on again. But Donovan Peoples-Jones, second-year wide receiver who was a late-round pick and has had a pretty outstanding start to his young NFL career. He's not the one or the two with Landry and Odell Beckham out there, but Peoples-Jones also a special teamer. Doesn't look like he may be able to make this one. Malcolm Smith. J.C. Treader shows up on here, limited on Wednesday and then did not practice Thursday with a knee. I do not have the total updated list for Friday here for you, so I apologize. Another limited was tackle Jedrick Wills, who they hope to obviously have in that lineup. Very important with this offensive line that Treader and Wills are healthy and ready to go for the Cleveland Browns and their top-ranked rushing offense, even getting it done with Dearness Johnson. So we'll see what ends up happening with Chubb. Mac Wilson was limited, and he's the guy who's going to step in for JOK if that be the case. He's had a calf injury but was full to go on Thursday. And then Takaris McKinley, who would, I assume he's in that rotation. I assume he would be the guy to go if Clowney couldn't. Shows up limited with a groin as well. So a lot of injuries for the Cleveland Browns here. The Steelers mostly unscathed. Ben Roethlisberger, his usual day off on Wednesday. They continue to list him with a pectoral and hip injury. He was full to go on Thursday. I'll mention Melvin Ingram here in a second. Limited the last 2 days. A lot of smoke and fire around his name just this week. Convenient that people like Aditi Kikwalani and Rappaport sleaze out from underneath wherever they come from and report this news after Mike Tomlin already has his presser for the week. I think that's maybe conveniently leaked there. I don't know what's going on. We're going to talk about that in a second because, they were discussing, now it's discussing his camp is requesting a trade. And, I'll talk about it right now. Here's a guy that's 32 years old who signed right before training camp. I don't know if he had bites or any feelers or interest from other teams. We know the Steelers were looking at a few other guys, including Justin Houston, who ended up signing with the Baltimore Ravens. Definitely reserve role, TJ Watt, he's not coming off the field very often. He's going to play 80 to 90% of the game. And Alex Highsmith in his second year is probably someone who's going to rotate out a little bit more because, let's just face it, he's still a second-year player. And I don't have the full snap counts, but Melvin Ingram, it's not as if he wasn't getting some playing time. He was still in there, kind of a three-man almost rotation. Not quite a full split with Highsmith, but when you carry over TJ's snaps that Ingram's going on either side of the field and rotating in with those guys to give him a breather, it was something probably in the 65% range if I want to guess off the top of my head. But don't forget, Watt and Highsmith both were banged up at a point here too, and Ingram was playing a lot more. And now all of a sudden he gets does he get a taste of that and then doesn't want to be the reserve guy that he was? He was definitely not signed and told that he would be starting. I highly doubt that from the Steelers. And with only a 1-year deal, it's like, who's trading for what? And I understand there's some teams that are banged up and they could use some help. There are some names that surfaced. Obviously, J.J. Watt got hurt and is probably out for the season with a shoulder injury with the Arizona Cardinals. Most likely when people make those links, it's because the Steelers don't want to trade within their own conference or division, obviously, so they're not going to trade with the Kansas City Chiefs and help their porous defense either. I don't know that Ingram offers a whole lot in trade value. It's a one-year guy that you really want to have around for depth. And I got to wonder, Mike Tomlin didn't necessarily say no. He just said he wasn't going to talk about it today. And he said, it's legitimate that he's been limited with a groin. And I hope that that's maybe the case. We saw some of this stuff surface before with James Washington, even other players, and it just seems like a sleazy move by the sports media. So we'll see what ends up happening there, because you would like to have somebody like that definitely in your coffers. But at the same time, I think a lot of teams were avoiding Ingram coming off an injury himself at his age. 1-year deal kind of with the Steelers prove it. He's already kind of proved he's still got that same, passion, that same talent. He's still an effective pass rusher. He's disruptive, even if maybe the stats don't necessarily line up. It's the same thing I say about Highsmith, either drawing penalties or collapsing the pocket and helping maybe Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and others get to the quarterback or at least disrupt plays. Ingram has been effective, and I think that's maybe what other teams are seeing, and maybe there's some rumblings there, but I don't know if it's come from Ingram or his agent. I don't know if there's anything going on with the Steelers or the other teams are kind of, nibbling at the bait. We're getting up against it here with the trade deadline. At least it's not Deshaun Watson talk. I'll put it that way. Chase Claypool was limited with a hamstring injury. That's all the more I'm going to say about Ingram. We'll see. We'll see if it happens. I don't have any other inside information other than the rumor and speculation. I hate to get into that type of stuff. Let's just hope he's healthy, because he would be someone you want on the field there on Sunday, especially against the Browns. And an ailing Baker Mayfield. God, I'm going to put this out here right now, too. If Mayfield takes the wrong hit, any Browns fans are coming back to look at this. Charles, I know you're listening out there. You're like our top fan that isn't a fan of the Steelers. He's a Browns guy. I don't want to hear like the Carson Palmer stuff that you still hear from like Bengals fans, 15 years later or whatever else. I think he's being put in a dangerous position where if anyone like falls on top of him or anything goes the wrong way, he could be out for the season. I don't know. I get it, man. If that's me, and he's still trying to play for this big contract, right? I'm probably out there. I want to earn my money. I don't want Case Keenum to start some pseudo quarterback controversy, which I actually did hear from some Browns fans from last Thursday. Trust me, you don't want Case Keenum to be your guy. That's not the guy you want as a part of a controversy, but trust me on that. I think Baker was always the right pick. As you see what happened, Sam Darnold turns into a pumpkin overnight, too. I think I mentioned that just the other day. 3-0, and now what with the Carolina Panthers? And a lot of people were saying, why didn't the Steelers trade for him? And it's like, well, the truth has been all revealed now. So I always felt that Mayfield was going to be the better pick for the Browns. We'll see. These quarterbacks get paid. I mean, even where Mayfield's at, whether you like him or not, or think he's just I think he's above average. There's still some tweaks that he needs to his game. He has an awful lot of talent around him, but really supported by the run game. And, of course, that's what the Steelers will have to stop. But let me get through the rest of the injury report here. Anthony McFarland Jr. back onto the active roster, full practice, as was Zach Banner added to the roster the week before. Full practice, and Mike Tomlin quoted, ready to go. So we're going to see. Maybe does he get inserted into the starting lineup this week? We shall see. Eric Ebron, a late add with a hamstring and limited practice. That one doesn't bother or affect me very much, to be completely honest. So let's talk some more. Steelers offense on the field against the Cleveland Browns defense. Jadeveon Clowney, we'll see Malik Jackson. We'll see if these guys are healthy and playing. If not, that's going to be detrimental to that front four against. I don't know what to think of the Steelers' offensive line. Which version are we going to get here? How are they going to contain Myles Garrett and keep him away from Ben Roethlisberger? We'll see what ends up happening here. Myles Garrett so far this year, bringing it up, 18 times he's gotten to the quarterback, and Clowney's gotten to him 11 times too. There's been a lot of tackles for loss. They've been very good at stopping the run. I do consider some of this with the opponents that they've faced, obviously too, but you still I'm not going to take it away. You can only play who's on your schedule. It's the same thing we said last year. I'll be consistent with that. It's as far as I'm going to go with it. But Garrett already has 9.5 sacks, and a lot of that has to do with, hello, Justin Fields. Welcome to the NFL. 4.5 sacks on Justin Fields. So, I'm not being facetious. I'm not stretching the truth here. That is what it is. But for the most part, now he didn't get to anybody. He didn't get to Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills in that Houston win in week 2. But a sack of Mahomes week 1, 4.5 on Fields. He had a half sack on Kirk Cousins, and then a sack, at least a sack or a sack and a half in each of the next 3 games with Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, and then Teddy Bridgewater on the Thursday night game. I'm trying to picture in my head the same way this can go. And I'm going to get into some of the odds and the stats and stuff because I thought maybe that the Vikings game was going to be a little bit different scripted than what it turned out. And that could very much be the blueprint for what we're going to see, some AFC North football, just a rough game in the trenches and maybe low scoring. So we're going to see where that ends up going. The Steelers, let's see, who else are they going to have to look for? Oh, wasn't Denzel Ward here on the injury report as well? And I think I just lost it, but I'm going to pull it back up for all of you because that's the kind of guy I am. I thought I saw Denzel Ward somewhere on the injury report for, hamstring, did not practice. I may have mentioned this a few minutes ago. I apologize if I'm a broken record, but as part of this defense, now it's going to be, they're going to have to rely on Greedy Williams, Greg Newsome, the junior, the second, whatever he is, the rookie, a good rookie corner. Greedy, I've never felt really comfortable with, but former first-round pick, that was somebody that we thought was going to be a lot better coming out of college in LSU that, he's going to have to rise up. Denzel Ward, obviously, I'm a Buckeyes guy, so I've always liked him coming out of Ohio State, and, he was a very high-drafted player, but he tends to miss 2, 3, 4 games a year, and this is a big one that he might be sitting out of. This might tip the cap a little bit in the Steelers' favor, particularly if the front 4 of those Cleveland Browns are missing 2 or 3 of those primary guys, and maybe they're going to be able to double or chip or do whatever with Myles Garrett. I could sense that the Steelers don't necessarily always want to chip in, and a lot of people just think, oh yeah, just throw the tight end out there, throw the running back in there. Well, that's disruptive to your own offensive plans. If you're going to target Najee Harris here in the pass game, and you're going to have him chip Myles Garrett, you don't know how that's going to end up turning out. You know what I mean? Myles might just blow right through it. He's much like TJ Watt. These guys are neck and neck. They're going to be compared like Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu were within this same division for the next decade. That's just the way it's going to be. And, you chip him, and then he's off his route. The timing's off. The execution's off. So it's not always going to be just as simple as throw another body in there. The body that I think you might get is if they start using an extra tackle here with Zach Banner. Maybe they'll use Derek Watt. I don't know how successful they're going to be against the run. We've always known that Myles Garrett is great against the run. We've known that Jadeveon Clowney excels against the run as well, and the Browns have been pretty stout, as I said, against when it comes to their defensive game against the run. They're 3rd overall yardage-wise in the NFL. So when you compare the Browns' defense, they're 7th against the pass and 3rd against the run, as opposed to the Steelers are 15th in passing, but still 29th. Pretty, I won't say putrid because they've I don't want to say they've addressed it necessarily, but they've committed to it more recently than they had at the beginning of the year over these last few games. We'll see how much they can commit if they're only picking up a yard or 2 or getting stacked up line of scrimmage, or there's too much getting where Najee's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. I would just really hate to see a game plan where it's the quick dink and dunk pass thing again in order to stretch the field, try and get some of the defenders out of the box. That stuff just really kind of for lack of better words, freaks me out. I'll say this much. A lot of people still probably are your, casual couch fans, and they're looking at it, they're Steelers fans, and they feel entitled to a win against the Cleveland Browns. This is going back now to before when these two teams, it could go either way. This isn't like a guaranteed W with any of the teams in the AFC North, as we've been saying for a while here. So I do have concerns there. I have concerns as to whether or not Ben gets hit or it makes any kind of mental errors, especially coming off the bye. We always know sometimes Mike Tomlin teams have won after the bye, but it doesn't always look the prettiest after the bye, doesn't it? It always feels like they're sluggish, or they're just not quite well put together. Some people will say, "Oh, playing down." We're not. I don't think you could play down to the Cleveland Browns at this point. I think all of these teams are at least even Steven, and considering injuries in different areas, I'm not sure that anyone, even the Ravens, have much of an advantage over anyone. The Bengals are the team that are the healthiest right now to watch out for. But this isn't about the Bengals, isn't it? So let's see. Who else do I have here? We've talked about Baker. Well, I'm still trying to talk about Browns defense. What else could we see? I'm hoping to see a little more from Pat Freiermuth. I guess you're going to have to. They've been using Zach Gentry. A lot of that has been obvious kind of rundowns, but they've thrown the ball to him a few times. He's leaked out, and that's been successful. But I think in order to have success in this game and beat the Cleveland Browns, if they're out without JOK, Mack Wilson, who would be filling in for him, has a calf injury, but he was full practice. He's somebody you can kind of target. Mack Wilson is kind of like the scrappy, kind of lunch pail type linebacker, like a Vince Williams was or a Robert Spillane is. It's the guy that you can get in the pass game. So I'm hoping they get Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, your top two dogs from this rookie draft class on offense. You got to get them out there. And it seems like the Steelers have had a lot of success on the drives where they've been more involved this season. We'll see if Deontay Johnson can have yet maybe another type of breakout game. Shout out to my cousin, Brad, out there. He was talking about James Washington. I had to remember this. The Ben Roethlisberger pump fake last year in the first game when they played in Week 5 at Heinz Field. I would say James Washington's been a Browns killer. He kind of brought that up. I looked at some of the stats. He's had some pretty solid games. Most of them have been, his bigger games have been against Cleveland. We're not talking about 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdown receptions, or 100 yards receiving, but a handful of catches, maybe one big break, maybe a touchdown catch. He's going to need to be relied upon. Everybody wondered where he was in the absence of Juju Smith-Schuster. And speaking of being absent, Chase Claypool has to come down with 1 or 2 big balls. He has to come down with these combat catches. Oh, the Steelers have to put up some points. That's just the way it is, because we're taking a look here at the odds this week. The Steel City Underground podcast is brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook. NFL fans, are you hungry for a big win this week? Well, the DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL, has you covered. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game, and if they do, you win $200 in free bets. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. It's that simple. So DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also get skin in the game with new same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. Some of these things are crazy, and Zach Adonia, you know what I'm talking about with that Thursday night game with Green Bay and Arizona. So Rondale Moore, man, my buddy gets his adult beverages going and makes some crazy bets, and that worked out for him. So, hey, if you're into all the parlays or prop bets, all the more to you. But the more legs you add, the more money you can win, obviously. So DraftKings is safe, it's secure, it's reliable, and best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code SteelCity. Bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game. Any team. Bet on any team you want for $5 to win their game, and you're going to get $200 in free bets. If they win, you win. Promo code is SteelCity this week at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Once again, they are an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Just to put in some of the disclaimers here. You must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. This is in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for more details. Gambling problems? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So now that we've got the DraftKings Sportsbook up and I'm taking a look at it, the Steelers odds right now are plus 3.5, kind of the same territory you have when you're dealing with being on the road. The Browns 3.5 3.5 favorite at home. This is about the same field goal or such as we always talk about here on the SCU podcast. The over-under on this game, 42. 42 seems kind of like the sucker bet. So let's take a look at what we've had over the last few weeks, because the Cleveland Browns, they've been able to put up some points. They had the big shootout with the Chargers, but otherwise, You take a look at some of the games that they've had: 31 against the Texans, 26 against the Bears, 14 with the Vikings, 14 with the Cardinals, 17 with the Broncos. So they haven't been scoring 20 points per game. A couple of those defenses can be stout at times that I've just mentioned here as well. Broncos kind of banged up, but still, they got some studs there. Steelers, on the other hand, hadn't been able to get a whole lot going themselves as far as scoring some points. They did get to 27 against the Denver Broncos, squeaked out 23 in overtime against the Seattle Seahawks, so maybe gently improving, but just recall before, again, the Bills 23, but special teams score 17 against the Raiders, 10 against the Bengals, 17 against the Packers. Yeah, 42. That's kind of sounding pretty interesting there. Don't forget the promo code Steel City, by the way. So once again, the Browns minus 3.5 at home. That's about where we expect it to be. You're almost picking them right there. It's that's kind of a tough one. You got a lot of that going around the league. Even though last week Steelers didn't play, there was a ton of lopsided games, and there's a couple of those here too where the Jets are getting 11 points against the Bengals. The Dolphins are getting 14 against the Buffalo Bills, and then the Rams. The Rams are laying 16 to the Houston Texans. So there's a few games that the odds makers believe are going to be a little lopsided this week. I don't see this one as a lopsided game. We already talked about what the Steelers offense might be doing. Let's talk about the Browns offense against the Steelers defense. Again, Baker Mayfield maybe playing here. We're going to see what Nick Chubb does. Does it really matter if the offensive line is healthy? Got to see. I got to believe that Jack Conklin and J.C. Treader will be a go. The Browns offensive line, I think we said this headed into the season, the best in the division, one of the best in the conference, maybe trending towards one of the best in the NFL. And that's how these horses get going. It don't matter who you plug and play in there, whether it's Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, who again, isn't going to be playing in this game, but that's the 1-2 punch. But Dearness Johnson goes out there, puts up, 100 and something? I've got it up. Let me take a look here. 146 and a touchdown. He was averaging 6'6", as was Felton 6'5", and then John Kelly, who was called up on that roster, 6'5". They were just pushing the Broncos around, and we saw the Steelers have their most success against the Denver Broncos also on the ground. So the Broncos have been unable to stop the run, but still goes to show that this is kind of like a system. Somebody was comparing it to Mike Shanahan and all of those Denver Broncos teams, Landis, Gary, and whoever you ended up grabbing and throwing in that backfield. It just seemed like any of those guys were doing well once upon a time, and that carried over for years and years. And here you go, the Cleveland Browns are doing much the same here. So that Steelers defense, at least, I can't speak of anything when it comes to anyone not being healthy. It looks like they've got a full complement of everyone. Devin Bush, we mentioned, if you missed this, some of our surprises, positive and or negative. We expect Bush to play better, Joe Schobert to play better alongside of him. I think there's still like a feeling out period there, and there's been injuries, and then the major injury. He's had a groin problem this season, and then he's had the major injury with the knee that he came back from too, where he got hurt against the Browns last year. So Devin Bush, this is going to be big. These guys are going to have to be in there, and if they end up using Robert Spillane as well as part of this, can't be suspect to letting some guys sneak around. Austin Hooper hasn't been, I won't say that any of these guys have been the biggest part of maybe the Browns offense this season, but you don't have, what do you want to say? It seems the ball gets distributed around, I guess is the best way to say, because we're through 7 games already, and the Browns have a number of guys. I mean, their leading receiver with 20 receptions is Kareem Hunt, who isn't even going to be playing in this game. Yards-wise, you're looking at David Njoku, tight end, who has 17 receptions in the 1 touchdown. He's been integrated a little bit more into this. Austin Hooper, who they paid a lot of money for last year in free agency, has 1 TD, 14 receptions, but it seems like almost like a little bit like a dozen and a half for a number of their players. Odell Beckham, 16 for 226. Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's out also with 13. Rashard Higgins, this is a guy that has a lot of chemistry with Baker Mayfield. More of a slot guy, going to have to keep an eye on him. They do have the rookie, Anthony Schwartz. He could take the top off. He's very fast. 7 of his catches, about half of the targets that have come his way for 102 yards. 44 is the long, so he's a guy that could definitely move the sticks. They still get guys, even these reserve running backs like Demetric Felton. He gets involved. So it's really hard to just pinpoint what the Steelers are going to have to limit. Is there a best thing that you take away? It's going to have to be the run, and then you're going to have to make sure you don't get beat by like the likes of Jarvis Landry, which is very difficult to do because you put the ball anywhere near him, he's probably going to catch it. You see it on replay and you think it's not a catch, half the time it is. I got an awful lot of respect for him and his game. We'll see how the tight ends end up working out. That's usually how, if I had to put my finger on something that would probably beat the Steelers here in this game, it would be a David Njoku, because they're going to be following around and watching Austin Hooper. The second tight end is what got to them as well against the Raiders. So keep an eye on these kind of storylines here. The Steelers, hopefully, and we still don't have any word on Stephon Tuitt yet or what's going to happen there. It seems as though everyone else, though, is healthy for this game on the defensive side. So for just the guys that you've had, like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Chris Wormley, Cam Hayward, all those guys are going to be good to go. I think Wormley has played above the line here. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. That's definitely going to be probably the one that ends up telling the story of this game in the trenches. Steelers defensive line, Browns offensive line. We'll see what happens with the secondary. Cam Sutton, Micah Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden. Everybody's good to go. So I'm anticipating a slugfest. I'm not anticipating, hopefully, the embarrassment that the Steelers got last year, that wild card game. Snap over Ben's head and the interceptions. Hopefully you don't have those type of things. You don't have those type of turnovers. We saw it happen. The turnovers were lopsided in that game. That's the most recent one, and it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And we're going to see how the Steelers respond to this. On the flip side, we saw how the Browns responded to it because they were embarrassed in Week 5 as well when they went to Heinz Field. So this is going back and forth, and you've got these games that are actually maybe a little more lopsided in scoring than what the bookies think with the 42 over and under. It's going to be interesting to take a look at. It's on Halloween, so there's going to be a lot of crazies there too, and it's going to probably be more wild than usual. The only thing I can't understand is like what studio executives went out with this schedule this week and said, let's have this game at 1 o'clock on Halloween. I mean, I'm trying to take a look and see what we have for the later slate of games that are in the afternoon. And looks like maybe Bucks and Saints is going to be one of the bigger ones. I mean, that looks like it because it's definitely not going to be the Jaguars and Seahawks. You got the Cowboys and Vikings on Sunday night and the Giants and Chiefs on Monday night. It's like, this game screams for prime time, but they just had the prime time game in Cleveland for Thursday nighters. So I get how they balance all of this out. This really should have the spotlights on it. It might later on in the season. The Steelers, the consequences here, though, for these teams, they're both kind of in the same category where they need to just pile some wins here. The Browns are third in the division right now at 4-3. And the Steelers are 3-3 because they've had the bye and they've been off. So they can match the Browns and have a head-to-head and climb a little bit here. Maybe gain some ground with Baltimore and also Cincinnati. Cincinnati, again, there's nothing against what they've done. They're top. They're the king of the mountain right now. Though I expect them to maintain this momentum, I still think the AFC North is going to chew each other apart. So I guess from my own personal perspective still too, if the Steelers have a good showing here, they're not completely beat themselves, embarrass themselves in this game, and they still have a loss, I still don't think it's the end of the world. But the problem now is that you go and drop to 0-2 in the AFC North, and you're kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit. So at least if they're 1-1, I still think they're going to be 500 in the division, 3-3, particularly now, even versus I thought maybe 4-2 at the start of the season. Man, it's looking incredibly rough. So I don't. Sometimes you come to me and say, Joe, you're all full of sunshine and rainbows. You're so overbiased. You're so homerish and everything else. this game concerns me more than some others that are coming up on the schedule because I still don't know that I know the identity of this Steelers team. And if we see it come out in this game, that could tell you a whole lot on how the rest of the season's going. And hopefully it's the good identity, because if they come out and they just don't look very sharp, it could be tough sledding for the remainder. So don't forget the DraftKings Sportsbook. Promo code is Steel City. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to chase down Brian and find him on social media and harass him and ask him where he's been. Hopefully he'll be back on the flip side here on Halloween. At some point we'll get together and collaborate, hopefully, on what we hope will be a Steelers victory. So until next time, my name is Joe Kuzma, and as always, I encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good. Here we go, Steelers, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.